I never expected the moment my marriage ended to be so silent. No screaming, no slamming doors, just Trent sliding a stack of divorce papers across our kitchen island while sipping coffee like he was approving a business contract. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, trying to make sense of the legal language that seemed designed to confuse me. When I reached the settlement page, my breath caught. I was getting nothing. Just a car that was still in his name and a small condo he planned to sell within months. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comment below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had a family member or spouse try to betray the love and trust you have for them. This journey is deep and wild. Follow me. He didn't even flinch as I stared at the numbers. He only said, with that calm cruelty he'd perfected over the years, "You'll be fine, Haley. You always land on your feet." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Then his phone lit up beside the papers. A message preview flashed across the screen. "Is she signing today? I can't wait for you to move in." He didn't bother hiding it. My voice shook when I asked how long this had been going on. He shrugged and took another sip of coffee. "Long enough. My name is Haley Rhodes, and I was 22 when I met Trent at a college career fair. He was charming, ambitious, full of dreams about building his own business empire. I believed in those dreams so much that I worked 2 jobs to help him through business school while putting my own education on hold. I was the one who stayed up late helping him write proposals, who celebrated every small victory, who held him when investors said no. We got married at 25 in a small ceremony neither of us could really afford, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. Over the years, I watched him climb higher while I stayed in the background, managing our home, supporting his networking events, being the perfect wife everyone expected. I didn't know it yet, but that tiny line buried in those divorce papers would save my life. As I sat there in our kitchen, pen hovering over the signature line, I noticed Trent watching me with an odd smirk. It wasn't triumph exactly. It was something worse. Satisfaction mixed with pity, like he'd already won a game I didn't know we were playing. Moving day came faster than I expected. I pulled up to our house, the one we'd chosen together, the one I'd decorated room by room, and found the locks already changed. Trent had given me exactly 2 hours to collect my things from the garage, where he'd dumped boxes labeled with my name in thick black marker. As I loaded my car, I saw other boxes stacked near the side entrance. These were labeled differently, Trent and Vanessa. The sight of those names together made my stomach turn. I was loading the last box when I heard voices from inside. The window was cracked open, and Trent's voice carried clearly into the yard. He was on the phone with someone, laughing about something. Then I heard him say, "She's too emotional to read anything carefully. She probably didn't even notice the clause. By the time she figures anything out, it'll be way too late." My hands froze on the box I was holding. What clause? I thought I'd read everything. But his confidence made me doubt myself. Had I missed something important? Or had he? 3 days later, I sat in the cramped office of Ms. Larkin, the divorce attorney a friend had recommended. She was older, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and reading glasses that made her look like someone's grandmother. But the way she studied documents reminded me of a detective examining crime scene evidence. She'd been quiet for almost 10 minutes, flipping through my settlement papers with a pen in hand, occasionally making small marks or underlining sections. Finally, she looked up at me, and something in her expression made my heart race. "Haley," she said slowly, removing her glasses. "Did you see this?" She turned the papers around and pointed to a paragraph near the bottom of page 7. The text was small, buried between 2 larger sections about property division. I leaned forward, squinting at the words I'd barely glanced at before. My eyes scanned the legal language, trying to understand what she was showing me. "What does it mean?" I asked. Ms. Larkin smiled, not happily, but with the satisfaction of someone who'd just found exactly what they were looking for. The clause stated clearly, Any asset acquired by either party during separation but before divorce finalization must be disclosed and divided equally according to marital property law. I read it 3 times, my brain slowly processing what this meant. Trent and I had been separated for 4 months before I signed those papers. 4 months where he'd been living his new life, making plans, building something I knew nothing about. "Ms. Larkin," I said carefully, "what exactly did Trent buy during our separation?" She pulled out her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a property record showing a house purchase dated 2 months before our divorce was finalized. The address was in the expensive part of town, the kind of neighborhood we used to drive through and dream about. The purchase price made my jaw drop. There were also bank statements showing new investment accounts opened in his name, transfers to offshore accounts, even a luxury car registration. "He's been busy," Ms. Larkin said quietly. "And according to this clause in your settlement, the one he clearly hoped you wouldn't understand, you're entitled to half of everything." I felt dizzy. "How do we prove this?" She closed her laptop. Very quietly, very carefully, and without him knowing until it's too late. That evening, I made the mistake of checking social media. Trent's profile was public, and he'd been posting constantly. There he was in front of a massive house with modern architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows. The caption read, "Fresh start. Rewarded for doing the hard thing." The comments were full of congratulations from people who had no idea he'd abandoned his wife to get there. Another post showed a black luxury car with the keys dangling in his hand. Another showed him and Vanessa on a beach somewhere tropical, both of them tanned and smiling like they'd won the lottery. I felt humiliated all over again. While I'd been crying in that tiny condo he'd stuck me with, he'd been living like a millionaire. But then I noticed something in one of the photos. A post Vanessa had shared and tagged him in. It was a picture of them standing in front of the same house, but this one had a date stamp in the corner. I zoomed in, my heart pounding. The date was 3 weeks before our divorce was finalized. Perfect. I screenshot everything and sent it to Ms. Larkin with a simple message, "Is this helpful?" For the next 2 weeks, I became a detective. Ms. Larkin had given me a list of places to check. The county registrar's office, online property databases, business registration websites. I visited each one calmly, professionally, pretending I was just a woman organizing her post-divorce paperwork. The clerk at the registrar's office was friendly, pulling up records without asking too many questions. That's where I found the deed to the house, purchased for cash, somehow, despite Trent claiming he was broke during our settlement discussions. I documented everything with my phone camera, making sure to capture dates, amounts, and signatures. I told no one what I was doing. Not my sister, not my friends, not even my parents who kept calling to check if I was okay. This had to stay secret. If Trent found out I was building a case, he'd find a way to hide the evidence or twist the narrative. As I was leaving the registrar's office, the friendly clerk called after me. "Oh, Miss Rhodes? I noticed your ex-husband's name on another property too. An investment apartment downtown. Just thought you should know." My hand tightened on my folder. "Thank you. That's very helpful." I ran into Vanessa at the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reaching for coffee when I heard her voice behind me, bright and artificially sweet. "Haley." "Oh my God, hi." I turned slowly, putting on the calmest face I could manage. She looked exactly like her photos. Young, confident, wearing expensive clothes I recognized as brands Trent used to say we couldn't afford. "Vanessa," I said simply. She smiled wider, and I realized she wanted this encounter. She wanted me to see how well she was doing, how she'd won. "I hope there are no hard feelings," she said, though her tone suggested she didn't care either way. "Trent and we just connected, you know? Sometimes these things happen." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I understand." She seemed disappointed by my calm reaction. Then, as if she couldn't help herself, she added, "We moved into the house the day after you signed the papers." Perfect timing, really. Everything just fell into place. I felt my pulse quicken, but I kept smiling. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you both. As she turned to leave, she paused. Oh, and Trent closed on that investment property last month. He's so smart with money. I watched her walk away, my mind racing. She'd just handed me 2 more pieces of evidence without even realizing it. That night, back in my tiny condo, I finally let myself break down. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the loneliness, crashed over me all at once. I sat on the floor of my bathroom and cried until I couldn't breathe, until my chest hurt and my eyes were swollen. For months, I'd been holding it together, being strong, pretending I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was devastated. The man I'd built my entire adult life around had thrown me away like I was nothing, like all those years of love and sacrifice meant nothing. He'd planned his exit so carefully, so cruelly, making sure I'd be left with nothing while he started fresh with someone new. But as my tears finally stopped and I looked at myself in the mirror, something shifted inside me. My face was blotchy and my eyes were red, but there was something else there too, determination. Trent thought I was weak. He thought I was too emotional, too trusting, too stupid to fight back. He was counting on me to disappear quietly. I wiped my face with a towel and whispered to my reflection, he has no idea what's coming. Then I walked to my desk and opened a new folder on my laptop. I titled it, Evidence. Ms. Larkin laid out her strategy like a general planning a careful campaign. We sat in her office with all my documentation spread across the table. Property records, photos, screenshots, bank statements I'd managed to obtain through legal channels. Here's what we're going to do, she said, pointing to a timeline she'd drawn on her notepad. We don't confront him. We don't warn him. We don't even hint that we know about any of this. We let him keep living his life, buying his toys, posting on social media. Every purchase he makes now just adds to what you're owed. I nodded, understanding the logic but feeling impatient. How long will this take? She looked at me seriously. However long it takes to make sure we have everything. If we move too soon, he'll hide assets. If we wait until he's bought everything he wants and thinks he's safe, then we strike. It made sense, but it was hard. Every day I had to watch him live freely while I built my case in silence. Ms. Larkin must have seen my frustration because she added, Haley, revenge isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's patient, methodical, and precise. That's how you win. Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it and smiled. Another major purchase just appeared on his credit report. He bought a boat. The investment apartment was downtown, in a newly renovated building with a doorman and a rooftop pool. I stood across the street, watching people come and go, wondering how Trent had afforded all this. Ms. Larkin had found the purchase records, but I wanted to see it myself. I waited until evening, then walked into the building's lobby like I belonged there. The doorman barely glanced at me as I headed toward the elevator. I didn't have a key, of course, but I didn't need one. I just needed to confirm it existed, to see what he was hiding. On the 5th floor, I found the unit number from the records. Through a window in the hallway, I could see inside another apartment with an identical layout. It was small but luxurious. Hardwood floors, modern fixtures, the kind of place young professionals paid premium rent for. As I was taking photos of the building directory showing Trent's LLC name listed as the owner, a real estate agent walked by with a couple. She was describing units in the building, and I heard her say something that made me freeze. The owner of 5C was here last week, bragging about how smart he was to buy before prices went up. Said he'd keep it from his ex-wife in the divorce. Some men, I tell you. I pretended to check my phone, but I was memorizing every word. When I got back to my car, I added this to my notes. The lies were piling up, and each one was another nail in Trent's coffin. Trent's arrogance knew no bounds. A week later, I received a text message from him, "Hope you're doing okay in that tiny place." You'll survive. You always do. I stared at the message, anger burning in my chest. But Ms. Larkin's words echoed in my mind, stay calm, stay quiet, don't reveal what you know. So I replied simply, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. I could almost feel his satisfaction through the phone, his belief that he'd won completely. That same evening, Vanessa posted a video tour of the house on her social media. I watched it 3 times, studying every detail. She walked through the massive living room with its vaulted ceilings, showed off the chef's kitchen with marble countertops, panned across the backyard with its infinity pool. Her voice was giddy with excitement. Can't believe this is my life now. Dreams really do come true. The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations. No one knew the truth about how this dream was built. I was about to close the video when something in the background caught my eye. As Vanessa walked past the kitchen counter, I could see paper spread out there. I paused the video and zoomed in as much as I could. One document was clearly visible, a mortgage contract with a date stamp in the top corner. I screenshot the frame and checked the date. 2 weeks before our divorce was finalized. Perfect. I sent the screenshots to Ms. Larkin immediately. Within an hour, she called me back, and I could hear the excitement in her usually calm voice. Haley, this is exactly what we needed. The date stamp on that mortgage document proves the house was purchased during your separation, before the divorce was final. Combined with everything else we've gathered, we have an airtight case. She paused, and I heard papers shuffling. There's something else. I had a forensic accountant review Trent's financial trail. He wasn't just careless on social media, he left digital footprints everywhere. Bank transfers, investment account openings, even emails to his financial advisor discussing how to protect assets from the divorce. He actually wrote that in an email. I couldn't believe it. Is that legal to access? Ms. Larkin chuckled. His advisor CC'd you on several emails early in your separation, probably by accident. You're legally entitled to review any correspondence that includes your email address. Trent made every mistake possible because he assumed you'd never look, never question, never fight back. I sat down heavily on my couch. How much are we talking about? She took a deep breath. Based on everything we've documented, the house, the investment apartment, the vehicle, the investment accounts, the boat. You're entitled to over $500,000, Haley. He tried to hide an empire, and the law says half of it is yours. The next few weeks felt strange. While I waited for Ms. Larkin to finalize our case, I tried to rebuild my life. I'd taken a job at a small marketing firm, nothing glamorous but honest work that paid the bills. My boss was kind, my coworkers were friendly, and slowly I started to remember who I was before Trent. I bought plants for my tiny condo and actually kept them alive. I started painting again, something I'd loved in college but abandoned when Trent said it was a waste of time. I called old friends I'd lost touch with and apologized for disappearing into my marriage. Most of them understood. Some of them had their own stories about losing themselves in relationships with men who didn't deserve them. Meanwhile, Trent continued posting his perfect life online. There were photos from expensive restaurants, weekend trips to wine country, and a particularly tone-deaf post about the importance of knowing your worth and not settling. I showed that one to Ms. Larkin during one of our meetings, and she actually laughed. Keep screenshot ing everything, she said. His arrogance is building our case for us. Then one afternoon, she called with the news I'd been waiting for. We have a court date. 4 weeks from today. It's time, Haley. The subpoena was delivered to Trent at his office on a Thursday afternoon. I know this because Ms. Larkin had arranged for a process server to confirm delivery, and I'd requested updates. By Thursday evening, my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Trent's voice on the message was furious, confused, panicked. Haley, what the hell is this? You're suing me? For what? We already settled everything. This is ridiculous. You can't do this. Call me back right now. I played the message for Ms. Larkin. She smiled and said, "Don't respond. Let him panic." He called again an hour later. This time his tone was different, still angry but with an edge of concern. "I don't understand what you think you're going to accomplish here. You signed the papers. It's done. This is just going to cost us both money and legal fees. Be reasonable." I deleted that message too. The third call came late at night. His voice was quiet now, almost pleading. "Haley, please. Just tell me what this is about. What clause?" I sat in my dark living room, listening to him beg for information, and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no sadness. Just a calm certainty that I was doing exactly what needed to be done. I saved all the voicemails as evidence of his harassment and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that made everything feel sterile and official. I arrived early with Ms. Larkin, both of us dressed professionally and carrying briefcases full of documentation. Trent showed up 15 minutes late, looking relaxed in an expensive suit, his lawyer beside him looking equally confident. He barely glanced at me as he took his seat on the opposite side of the room. I watched him whisper something to his lawyer, who nodded and smiled. They thought this was going to be easy. They thought I was wasting everyone's time with some emotional outburst disguised as a legal case. The judge entered, and we all stood. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression that reminded me of Ms. Larkin. As she reviewed the case summary, I saw her eyebrows raise slightly. She looked at Trent, then at me, then back at the documents. "Mr. Rhodes," she said, "I've reviewed the preliminary filings. This appears to be a dispute over asset disclosure during your divorce proceedings. Is that correct?" Trent's lawyer stood smoothly. "Your Honor, we believe this is a misunderstanding. The divorce settlement was fair and legally binding. My client disclosed all relevant assets." Ms. Larkin stood. "Your Honor, we have significant evidence suggesting otherwise. May I present our documentation?" Ms. Larkin's presentation was methodical and devastating. She started with the timeline, showing exactly when Trent and I separated versus when our divorce was finalized. Then she pulled out the settlement papers, highlighting the clause about asset division. According to this clause, which Mr. Rhodes himself included in the settlement, any assets acquired during separation must be disclosed and divided equally. She clicked a button, and the screen behind her lit up with the first piece of evidence, property records for the house. This residence was purchased 2 months before the divorce finalization. Purchase price: $850,000, cash. Trent's lawyer started to object, but Ms. Larkin continued smoothly. "Here we have social media posts from Mr. Rhodes and his current partner, both dated before the divorce was final, showing them living in this property." The screen filled with screenshots, Trent in front of the house, Vanessa's video tour, timestamps clearly visible. I watched Trent's face pale. His lawyer was frantically whispering to him, and I could see panic replacing his earlier confidence. Ms. Larkin moved through each asset, the investment apartment with the real estate agent's statement about Trent bragging, the luxury vehicle registration, the boat purchase, the offshore investment accounts. Every single piece was documented with dates, dollar amounts, and evidence. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as the presentation continued. Finally, she looked directly at Trent. "Mr. Rhodes, this is serious. These allegations suggest intentional concealment of marital assets." During the lunch recess, I stood in the courthouse hallway drinking water from a fountain when I heard raised voices around the corner. I recognized them immediately, Trent and Vanessa arguing. "You told me this was handled." Vanessa's voice was sharp with panic. "You said the divorce was clean, that she got what she deserved and couldn't touch anything else. Now you're telling me we might lose the house?" Trent's response was defensive. I didn't think she'd actually read the paperwork carefully. She never paid attention to legal stuff before. How was I supposed to know she'd hire some attack dog lawyer? There was a pause, then Vanessa spoke again, her voice cold. I didn't sign up to lose everything for you. If this goes badly, if we have to sell the house, if your finances get destroyed, I'm done. I'm not going down with your ship. I heard footsteps, and Vanessa came around the corner, nearly running into me. Her face was flushed with anger and what looked like fear. Our eyes met for just a second, and I saw the exact moment she realized I'd heard everything. She hurried past me without a word. Trent appeared a moment later, looking exhausted and older somehow. He saw me and stopped. Haley, he started, but I just walked away. There was nothing left to say to him. Ms. Larkin found me a few minutes later and smiled. I saw Vanessa leave. She looked upset. I nodded. I think she's realizing this isn't the fairy tale she thought it was. The afternoon session focused on the judge's ruling. She'd had lunch to review all of Ms. Larkin's documentation, and her expression when she returned to the bench told me everything I needed to know. I've carefully examined the evidence presented, she began, her voice carrying clear authority through the courtroom. Mr. Rhodes, the settlement agreement you drafted and Ms. Rhodes signed includes a very specific clause regarding asset disclosure. This clause states that any assets acquired during separation but before divorce finalization must be shared equally. She pulled up the list Ms. Larkin had compiled. The evidence shows you purchased a primary residence valued at $850,000, an investment property valued at $300,000, a luxury vehicle valued at $90,000, and opened several investment accounts totaling approximately $200,000, all during your separation and before your divorce was finalized. Trent's lawyer tried to interrupt. Your Honor, my client maintains that these were business investments, not marital assets. The judge cut him off sharply. Counselor, timing matters in law. These purchases were made while your client was still legally married. The clause in the settlement, which your client wrote, specifically addresses this situation. She looked directly at Trent. You attempted to mislead both your wife and this court. That is extremely serious. I felt Ms. Larkin's hand gently squeezed my arm under the table. The judge continued listing each asset and its required division. With every item, I watched Trent sink lower in his chair. His face had gone from confident to pale to something that looked like shock. The house would need to be appraised, and I was entitled to half its equity. The investment apartment would either need to be sold or refinanced, with half the proceeds going to me. The luxury car would be sold and the money split. The investment accounts would be divided equally. Then the judge added something I hadn't expected. Additionally, Mr. Rhodes, you will be responsible for all court costs and Ms. Rhodes' legal fees. Your attempt to conceal assets has wasted this court's time and resources. She looked at her notes. There will also be penalties for failure to disclose, which will be calculated and added to the final settlement amount. Trent finally spoke, his voice desperate. Your Honor, this will destroy me financially. I can't possibly pay all of this. My business will suffer. I'll have nothing left. The judge's expression didn't soften. Mr. Rhodes, you had significant assets that you chose to hide from your spouse. The fact that fairly dividing them creates hardship for you is a consequence of your own actions, not a reason to avoid your legal obligations. She set down her gavel. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for the final settlement hearing. Until then, all assets in question are frozen. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom like thunder. I walked out of the courthouse with Ms. Larkin, both of us silent until we reached the parking lot. The afternoon sun was bright after the dim courtroom, and I had to squint against the glare. I felt strange, not triumphant exactly, but something calmer. Validated. Behind us, I heard rapid footsteps. Haley! Haley, please wait. I turned to see Trent jogging toward me, his expensive suit jacket flapping awkwardly. Ms. Larkin stepped slightly forward, protective, but I held up my hand. I could handle this. Trent stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. Up close, he looked terrible, his face was drawn, his eyes were red, and his confidence had completely evaporated. "Haley, please," he said, his voice breaking. "You have to help me fix this. We can work something out, right? We don't have to do this through the courts. I'll give you some money, we can negotiate privately." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd slid those divorce papers across our kitchen island. "You want me to help you?" I asked quietly. He nodded eagerly. "Yes. Please. You know me. You know I didn't mean for it to turn out like this. I made mistakes, but we can fix this together." I felt Ms. Larkin watching me, waiting to see how I'd respond. The old Haley might have felt sorry for him. But I wasn't her anymore. "No, Trent," I said simply. "We can't." I took a breath and continued, my voice steady and calm. "I didn't destroy your life, Trent. Your choices did. You chose to plan an exit while we were still married. You chose to hide assets you legally owed me. You chose to humiliate me, to leave me with nothing while you built a luxury life. You chose all of it." His face crumpled. I know I messed up. But please, Haley. I'm begging you. Don't take everything." I shook my head. "I'm not taking everything. I'm taking what's legally mine, what was always mine according to the papers you wrote. You're the one who included that clause, remember? You were so confident I'd never read it carefully, never question anything, never fight back." He reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "Vanessa left you, didn't she?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from their argument. He nodded miserably. "This morning. She said she couldn't handle the stress." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of something, not quite pity, but recognition of his pain. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a notification from my bank. A large deposit had just cleared. It was the first payment from the frozen accounts, released by court order. I looked back at Trent one last time. "Goodbye," I said simply, and walked away. This time, he didn't follow. He just stood there in the parking lot, watching me leave just like I'd watched him leave me months ago. The next few weeks brought a cascade of changes to Trent's carefully constructed new life. Through mutual acquaintances and the inevitable gossip that follows any dramatic court case, I heard the pieces of his unraveling. The luxury car was sold at auction because he couldn't make the payments without access to his frozen accounts. The house went on the market, though the appraisal came in lower than he'd hoped, meaning his equity was less than expected. The investment apartment found renters, but the income had to be split between us per the court order. His boat, the last symbol of his fresh start, was repossessed when he missed 2 payments. Vanessa had indeed left him, and according to her social media, she was now dating some tech entrepreneur in San Francisco. Her posts about Trent had been completely deleted, as if their relationship had never existed. Meanwhile, I received updates from Ms. Larkin about each phase of the settlement process. Money was being transferred, assets were being divided, and every calculation came back in my favor. The penalties the judge had mentioned added an extra $50,000 to my total settlement. I didn't feel gleeful about Trent's collapse. Mostly, I felt relief. Relief that I'd trusted my instincts, relief that I'd found Ms. Larkin, relief that the legal system had actually worked. My tiny condo didn't feel so tiny anymore. It felt like mine, truly, completely mine. 6 months after the final settlement, I was living a completely different life. I'd used part of the settlement money as a down payment on a small but beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. It had a garden where I planted flowers every weekend, a studio where I could paint, and enough space to finally breathe. I'd left my marketing job to start a small jewelry business, something I'd dreamed about for years but never had the confidence to pursue. Trent used to tell me it was impractical, that I should focus on real work. Now, my pieces were selling online, and I'd even gotten orders from a boutique downtown. I reconnected with my sister, who I'd been distant from during my marriage. We had coffee every Sunday and talked about everything, her kids, my business, our childhood. She told me I seemed lighter somehow, more like my old self. My parents visited and told me they were proud of how I'd handled everything. Friends from college reached out after hearing about the divorce, and I started building a social life again. One evening, I was arranging new pieces for my online shop when Ms. Larkin called. "Haley," she said warmly. "I have one more update for you." My heart jumped slightly. "What is it?" She paused for effect. "The investment apartment finally sold. After all calculations and the court's division requirements, there's an additional payment coming your way. It's substantial. Check your email, I just sent the details." I opened my laptop and pulled up Ms. Larkin's email. The number made me blink twice to make sure I was reading it correctly. After months of legal battles, settlements, and negotiations, the final tally was even higher than we'd originally calculated. The apartment had sold above market value, and after splitting everything according to the court order, my share would bring my total settlement to just over $600,000. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed. This money represented more than just financial security. It represented justice. Real, tangible proof that I hadn't been wrong to trust my instincts, to hire a lawyer, to fight back against someone who tried to erase me. I called Ms. Larkin back. "Thank you," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "For everything. For seeing what I couldn't see, for believing me, for fighting for me." She was quiet for a moment, then said gently, "You did this, Haley. You're the one who noticed something was wrong. You're the one who kept detailed records. You're the one who stayed strong when he tried to intimidate you into backing down. I just helped you navigate the legal system." After we hung up, I walked through my house, running my fingers along the walls I'd painted myself, looking at the artwork I'd created, feeling the solid reality of the life I'd rebuilt. Trent had left me with nothing, or so he thought. But I'd read everything carefully, found that one crucial sentence, and taken back not just money but my dignity, my strength, my future. I ended the evening on my back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Somewhere across town, Trent was probably struggling to rebuild his life, learning the hard way that actions have consequences. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I was thinking about tomorrow, about the jewelry order I needed to finish, about the painting class I'd signed up for, about dinner plans with friends. He'd tried to write the ending to our story, making himself the victor and me the forgotten footnote. Instead, I'd written my own ending. And it was so much better than anything he could have imagined. This story teaches us that integrity is the hallmark of life. Love and respect keeps the family moving forward. Have you ever watched someone's true character get exposed by greed? Share your story in the comment below.